Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Featured on primetime Friday night in Milwaukee, the Kentucky Wildcats. And listen, Kentucky is such a wild story. Like, you think about their season. You think about the teams that we're talking about that are good enough to win national championships, Florida, Duke, etc., Tennessee. Kentucky beat a darn bunch of them, okay? They beat Duke to open the regular season, beat Florida, beat Tennessee. Obviously, Kentucky is dealing with injuries. And I thought it was kind of crazy. I was thinking about this going into the night of the opening round the opening round Friday of the NCAA tournament. Think about all the teams that we're talking about going into the NCAA tournament. Is Florida a title contender? Is Duke a title contender? What's wrong with Auburn? What's wrong with Bama? You know, Arkansas beating Kansas. What's wrong with Kansas? The surprise teams, the BYUs, schools like that. I don't feel like anybody was talking Kentucky, but I also know that Friday night was darn important to Kentucky, not just because you want to get an NCAA tournament win, but there's a couple variables at play. First NCAA tournament game under Mark Pope. We know that, of course, Mark Pope had yet to win an NCAA tournament game. Now, I largely thought that was a nonsense stat, to be perfectly honest, because, listen, for most of his career, he was coaching at Utah Valley and then BYU in the WCC. His best team at BYU's tournament was canceled because of COVID. So I didn't really care that he had never won a tournament game, but Pope had never had a tournament win. Also worth noting, by the way, I do think, you know, I said it to our guy, Mark, who runs our Torres on UK page. I said, you know, there's a little PTCD, post-traumatic Cal syndrome going on at Kentucky. We all remember Oakland. We all remember St. Peter's. And so I thought this was just a really important game for Kentucky to come out, get the win. And I think quietly the fan base was maybe a little bit more nervous than they should have been, because it's just, we've seen this story before. Well, there are no real issues as Kentucky gets the victory to open the NCAA tournament. They beat 14th seed Troy. Final score 76-57. First off, you know, I'll say this. Listen, it was a little bit of maybe a closer game than I think a lot of people, maybe if you weren't watching, if you weren't paying attention, maybe a little bit closer than people realized. It was a 6-point game at halftime. I think Troy cut it to about 6 or so, 7-8 minutes to go. I think it was 13 minutes to go. It was a 6-point game, as a matter of fact. But as you can see, bottom of the screen, producer Matt just found a great stat. Kentucky goes on a monster run in the second half to close Troy, put them away. It isn't even close. And I'll tell you this, man, again, I think it's a different kind of march for Kentucky, a 16-0 run, as you can see at the bottom of the screen, where I think expectations are different. I think injuries have played a factor, but I give credit to the resilience of this team. And I'll tell you what, I just don't think you can count them out with the dudes that they have, the toughness that they have, and the resilience that they've shown all year. Listen, you talk about all these teams across college basketball. I thought the most interesting stat that came out this weekend, Kentucky fans, you could correct me in the chat, but what did Mark Pope say at his press conference on Sunday when that selection committee revealed the bracket? That Kentucky has among the bottom 10, I don't even know the right terminology, but basically minutes continuity in college basketball. In other words, among the projected lineup that was expected in the preseason, Kentucky is in bottom 10 in terms of the amount of minutes that those guys actually played together. We've talked about it all year. Early in the season, Kirk Kriisa goes down with an injury. Then you're starting to deal with that. Then Andrew Carr gets hurt. Then Andrew Carr gets healthy and Lamont Butler goes down. Then Lamont Butler comes back and Jackson Robinson goes down. Then Lamont Butler goes down again. Then Jackson Robinson and Lamont Butler come back. Then Jackson Robinson's out for the year. Then Lamont Butler comes back, but he's playing with one shoulder. And you know what? It doesn't matter, because this team finds ways to win, and I give them credit. I think, first of all, I think that the thing, if you're looking for a positive with this Kentucky team, just different guys and resilient guys stepping up every night. First of all, Otega always a beast, okay? We've said it since November, probably since the Duke game. Otega Owe, I was not familiar with your game, okay? I was familiar with his game, But I don't think that I realized quite how good this kid was, and frankly, how important he was going to be to this team as the season went on. Because frankly, Kentucky just didn't really have very many guys after Jackson Robinson gets hurt. He has 20 points in this game, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 steals. I don't know what his future is. In other words, is he going to go pro? Is he going to come back? My guess is he comes back. If he comes back, we're talking about a potential first-team All-American next year, certainly a preseason first-team All-American and just an alpha. But I think what stands out to me about this Kentucky team is their ability to continue to step up night after night, game after game with different guys. On Friday night, you look at the guys off the bench, Brandon Garrison, 13 points, 6 boards, 2 steals, 2 assists off the bench. Colin Chandler, he's another one. I think give him an offseason where he's getting back into basketball shape. Remember, this was a kid that was on a Mormon mission, didn't play basketball at all for 2 full calendar years. 9 points in 10 minutes off the bench for this kid. He has been playing much better the second half of the year. Trent Noah gave him great minutes. And I think that's the thing that's most impressive to me. I'm not going to oversell a win over Troy. I'm not going to pretend like it's the greatest win in the history of college basketball. But you're talking about a team without one of their best scorers. You're talking about a team with a point guard basically playing with one shoulder. Lamont Butler in 25 minutes, 0 points, 3 assists, the resilience of that kid. And I'll tell you what, as we start to transition, we start to talk and we start to think about Sunday, whenever they play, I don't know if it's officially been announced yet, but they will play Illinois. And I think that's a very interesting matchup because I think the default is, well, Illinois is more talented. Illinois is playing better. I don't know if they're playing better, but they were awesome on Friday night against Xavier. Xavier just didn't have the dudes to keep up with Illinois. By the way, let's see if Sean Miller is still at Xavier next year. That's another conversation for another day. He might be the front runner for Texas. But I just bring it up because Illinois got a bunch of dudes, but Illinois is wildly inconsistent. To me, Illinois is actually a little bit the reverse Kentucky. Kentucky, every game you get a little bit of a different lineup, and you don't really know how they continue to win because the guys in this lineup just continue to get kind of banged up and nicked up and hurt and this and that. And yet Kentucky keeps finding ways. Illinois is the opposite. They're crazy talented, but one night they look like they did against Xavier tonight. And then the next night they look, not very good and not really in position, to have success. And so to me, we've talked about it all year. I understand that, Bruce Pearl's going to win SEC Coach of the Year, that a Todd Golden is going to be in the conversation for National Coach of the Year. I do think, though, what Mark Pope continues to do with this team is as impressive as pretty much anybody anywhere in college basketball. Again, game after game after game after game after game. Every game, the lineup's a little bit different. Even when you have guys playing, they're nowhere close to healthy. And so I give Mark Pope a ton of credit. I am fascinated to see this team moving forward because I don't think the season's over. Listen, Illinois is a really good team. We don't have point spreads yet. I think it's possible that Illinois is favored, but I think the opposite is true. Like I said a second ago, I think Illinois right now has a ton of talent, but you have no idea what you're getting game to game from them. From Kentucky, you have guys night after night after night overachieving and finding ways to put the ball in the basket and win. So I give Kentucky a ton of credit for getting past Troy. And like I said, I think low-key that was maybe a more important game I think that was low-key a little bit more important of a game for the Kentucky fan base than maybe a lot of people realized.